despite all their errors, have brought this forward. Happiness is sleeping, and suffering requires us to stay there. They know happiness is sleeping, and the suffering requires us to stay there. We could concentrate on building the future instead of criticizing the past. You start in the world, if you have some wisdom and some humility, by taking the potential that lies dormant in front of you and interacting with it in the logos-like manner, with truth and with love, and by transforming that potential into whatever you can create out of it that's good. It won't be small if you do that. You can transform your whole household by transforming your room. You can transform your whole neighborhood by transforming your house. But these things spread very, very rapidly, and that is right there in front of you. People think they're impoverished, that they don't have any opportunity, and the opportunity is hidden from them by their unwillingness to take the steps that are necessary to put what they could put in front of them in order, and to produce the beauty instead of the ugliness where they could do that. And I don't think there is anything more powerful than that. That works. Happiness is sleeping, and suffering requires us to stay there. They know happiness is sleeping, and the suffering requires us to stay there. Happiness is sleeping, and suffering requires us to stay there. They know happiness is sleeping, and the suffering requires us to stay there. So to say, well, here is a balm for the suffering, and it's profound and deep, and here's what it's meant to me, and here's how you can incorporate it into your life. People are absolutely starving for that, or dying of thirst for that. I've mentioned to people that they should clean up their rooms. That's become quite the internet meme. But I'm really serious about it because it's really hard to do that. It isn't just that you clean it up. You also want to make it beautiful. 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 It's really hard to make something beautiful. Make it beautiful. It's really worthwhile. Make it beautiful. It's really hard to make something. Something beautiful, even one thing, if you can just make one thing in your life beautiful, then you've established a relationship with beauty, and then you can start to expand that relationship with beauty out into the world, like into other elements of your life, and that is so worthwhile. It's just incredibly, crazily worthwhile. Make it beautiful. 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 It's really hard to make something beautiful. Worthwhile. Make it beautiful. It's really hard to make something beautiful. Make it beautiful. terrified of art. They buy some mass-produced thing because they don't want anybody laughing at them for their lack of taste. And they would get laughed at because they have no taste. But you have to, well, it's right, because what do you know, right? You have to develop it, and so you're going to stumble along and make mistakes to begin with. And you're going to show yourself, because if you're like, oh, I think this is pretty, and you know, somebody comes over and goes, hey, what's up with you? It's kind of hard on your self-esteem, but it's a you're stumbling towards the right, you're stumbling towards the kingdom of God. That's what you're stumbling towards when you try to make an aesthetic decision. Make it beautiful. 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 It's really hard to make something beautiful. Make it beautiful. It's really worthwhile. Make it beautiful. It's really hard to make something beautiful. Make it beautiful. It's really worthwhile. Beauty is absolutely terrifying to people because beauty highlights what's ugly. And so if you start to make your room beautiful, then everything around that isn't like that just starts to glow in the worst sense. It's terribly dangerous. That's why people are afraid of beauty, but it's the greatest thing you can do. Beautiful things are beautiful for a reason. That beauty has depth, like it's real depth, man. That's what gets you in touch with the transcendent and the divine is beauty. You introduce that into your room, you're playing with fire. And people will resist it. Make it beautiful. 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 It's really hard to make something beautiful. Make it beautiful. It's really worthwhile. Make it beautiful. It's really hard to make something beautiful. Make it beautiful. It's really worthwhile. I was in this museum a while back. It was full of these paintings from the late Renaissance. There's like a dozen of them in this one room. Every painting on that wall was worth $300 million, like minimum. You couldn't buy those paintings. Like there was like a dozen of them in there. I thought, wow, there's like $3.6 billion worth of paintings in this room, and people are making pilgrimages from all over the world just to look at them. It's like, what the hell's going on? It's like, yeah, no kidding. What the hell's going on? There's beauty in those paintings. There's beauty, and it's magnificent. And part of what it does is say you aren't who you should be. That's what beauty does to you. That's why you're intimidated by a beautiful woman. Staggeringly beautiful woman. It's like, oh my God. You know, attracted for sure, but definitely intimidated. It's like, well, that's because you aren't who you could be. Beauty does that to you because beauty has that contrast. Beauty is so valuable and we're so afraid of it. Beauty is so valuable and we're so afraid of it. It's not the only path we can define. Love is one of them, I suppose. But beauty, especially of the potential future. That if we just got our acts together and beautified things, that's the place that we can inhabit, and that would ennoble us. That's why Jerusalem, the heavenly city, is paved with gemstones. They're crystalline, they emit light. Yeah, it's the proper dwelling place for an enlightened consciousness. Beauty is the proper dwelling place for an enlightened consciousness. We ignore it at our spiritual and economic peril. It's obvious. There's almost nothing more valuable than beauty. Beauty is so valuable and we're so afraid of it. Beauty is so valuable and we're so afraid of it. Beauty is so valuable and we're so afraid of it. Beauty is so valuable and we're so afraid of it. Sleeping Beauty goes to sleep, and the reason she goes to sleep is because she has parents who are quite old, so they're pretty desperate to have a child, like so many people are, and they only have one child, like so many people do now. They want anything to happen to this child, it's like, hey, it's a miracle. She's the princess, they're not letting anything around here, so they have a big christening party, and they invite everybody, but they don't invite Maleficent, and Maleficent is the terrible mother. She's nature, the thing that goes bump in the night. She's the devil herself, so to speak. She's everything that you don't want your child to encounter. So the king and queen say, oh, we just want to invite her to a christening. It's like, good luck with that. That's an Oedipal story. The mother who devours the child by overprotecting him or her. Instead of being strengthened by an encounter with the terrible world, they're weakened by too much protection. And then when they're let out into the world, they cannot live. That's the story of Sleeping Beauty. That's the story of Sleeping Beauty.
Isn't it a story that must be told?
And they apologize to Maleficent when she first shows up. They say, well, you know, they have a bunch of half-witted excuses why they don't invite her. We forgot. It's like, I don't think so. You don't forget something like that. Because she kind of makes that point. It's like the whole horror of life. You don't forget about that when you have a child. That's for sure. You might wish that it would stay at bay, but you do not forget about it. The question is, do you invite it to the party? And the answer is, it bloody well depends how unconscious you want your child to be. And if you want your child to be unconscious, well, then you have the additive. That is, that maybe they won't leave home. So you can take advantage of them for the rest of your sad life instead of going off to find something to do for yourself. First, you can take revenge on them if they do have any impetus towards courage that you sacrificed yourself 30 years ago and want to stamp out as soon as you see it develop to your child. And that's another thing that would be quite pleasant. Would be quite pleasant. Would be quite pleasant. That's another thing that would be quite pleasant. Would be quite pleasant. Would be quite pleasant. That's another thing that would be quite pleasant. Would be quite pleasant. Would be quite pleasant. So that's what happens in Sleeping Beauty. It's the story of Sleeping Beauty. That's the story of Sleeping Beauty. That's the story of Sleeping Beauty. That's the story of Sleeping Beauty.
Isn't it a story that must be told?
Yeah, well, none of this is pleasant, and nothing that happens in that story is pleasant. So Sleeping Beauty, she's naive as hell. They put her out in the forest and have her raised by these goody two-shoes fairy. And the first idiot prince that wanders by, she falls in love with so badly that she has post-traumatic stress disorder when he rides off on his horse. That's what happens. Then she goes into the castle and she's all freaked out because she's met the love of her life in 5 minutes. That's when the spinning wheel, that's the wheel of fate, pops up and she pricks her finger. They try to get rid of all the spinning wheels. They try to get rid of all the wheels of fate with this pointed end. She finds and pricks her finger and falls down unconscious. Well, she wants to be unconscious, and no bloody wonder. She was protected her whole life. She's so damn naive that her first love affair just about kills her. She wants to go to sleep and never wake up. Never wake up. Never wake up. She wants to go to sleep and never wake up. And so that's exactly what happens. And then she has to wait for the prince to come and rescue her. You think, how sexist can you get? That's a boneheaded way of looking at the story, because the prince isn't just a man who's coming to rescue the woman. The prince also represents the woman's own consciousness. That's the story of Sleeping Beauty. That's the story of Sleeping Beauty. That's the story of Sleeping Beauty. That's the story of Sleeping Beauty.
Isn't it a story that must be told?
Without that forward-going, courageous consciousness, the woman herself will drift into unconsciousness and terror. All she can do is lay there and sleep, the sleep of the naive and damned. She has to clean herself up, bring her own consciousness, her own masculine consciousness into the forefront so that she can survive in the world. Unless the woman is taken out of man, so to speak, then she isn't a human being. She's just a creature, and that's partly what's embedded in this story. So you don't want to read it as a patriarchal. You don't want to read anything that way. New Age people are creative, but they can't think critically. But they can't think critically. But I can think critically. But I can think critically. New Age people are creative, but they can't think critically. But they can't think critically. But I can think critically.
Yes. So I think very deeply.
So this is a creative, theoretical enterprise conjoined with the capacity to tell the difference between bad ideas and good ideas. And hopefully what I'm going to talk to you about are the greatest ideas that humanity has ever produced. There are also ideas that we don't understand well, and whose highest level of formal development we risk forgetting because we're criticizing things that we invented as a species, but that we cannot understand rationally. And we're predisposed to believe that ideas that we can't understand rationally have to be wrong. And sometimes that's true, but sometimes we're just not smart enough to understand them. So, New Age people are creative, but they can't think critically. But they can't think critically. But I can think critically. But I can think critically. New Age people are creative, but they can't think critically. But they can't think critically. But I can think critically.
So I think very deeply.
New Age people are creative, but they can't think critically. They can't think critically. But I can think critically. New Age people are creative, but they can't think critically. But they can't think critically. But they can't think critically.
I think very deeply.
Think critically. But they can't think critically.
I think very deeply. Yes.
Think critically. What could you do to improve yourself? Well, the first question might be, why should you even bother improving yourself? And I think the answer to that is something like, so you don't suffer any more stupidly than you have to. And maybe so others don't have to. It's something like that. You know, like there's a real injunction at the bottom of it. It's not some casual self-help doctrine. It's that if you don't organize yourself properly, you'll pay for it. And in a big way, if you don't organize yourself properly, you'll pay for it. And so will the people around you. If you don't organize yourself properly, you'll pay for it. And in you actually do care about that, because if you're in pain, you will care about it. And so you do care about it, even if it's just that negative way, you know. It's very rare that you can find someone who's in excruciating pain who would ever say, well, it would be no better if I was out of this. Pain is one of those things that brings the idea that it would be better if it didn't exist along with it. It's incontrovertible. You get your act together so that there isn't any more stupid pain around you than necessary. And if you don't organize yourself properly, you'll pay for it in a big way. And if you don't organize yourself properly, you'll pay for it. And so will the people around you. If you don't organize yourself properly, you'll pay for it in a big way. And if you don't organize yourself properly, you'll pay for it. And so will the people around you. Well, how would you go about getting your act together? Well, the answer to that is something like, look around for something that bothers you and see if you can fix it. Fix it. Fix it. Well, you can do this in a room. It's quite fun. Maybe your bedroom, you can sit there and just sort of meditate on it. If I wanted to spend 10 minutes making this room better, what would I have to do? But you have to ask yourself that, right? It's not a command. It's like a genuine question. And things will pop out in the room. There's a stack of papers over there that's kind of bugging you, and things will pop out in the room. You know that maybe a little order there would be a good thing. And things will pop out in the room. There's some rubbish behind your computer monitor, and things will pop out in the room. The room would be slightly better and a little less dusty, and the cables were all tangled up. Fix it. Fix it. Fix it. See if you can fix it. Fix it. Fix it. See if you can fix it. Fix it. Now you think, well, if you allow yourself just to consider the expanse in which you exist at that moment, there'll be all sorts of things that will pop out in it that you could just fix. You know, I might say, well, if you were coming to see me for psychotherapy, the easiest thing for us to do first would just be to get you to organize your room. You think, well, is that psychotherapy? And the answer is, well, it depends on how you conceive the limits of your being. And I would say, start where you can start. You know, if something announces itself to you, which is a strange way of thinking about it, as in need of repair, that you could repair, then, hey, you fix it. You fix 100 things like that, your life will be a lot different. Fix it. Now, I often tell people, too, fix the things you repeat every day. Fix it. Because people tend to think of those as trivial. If you can fix it, those things lead to constant 50% of their life. Fix it. And people think, well, they're mundane, I don't need to pay attention to them. It's like, no, that's exactly wrong. The things you do every day, those are the most important things you do. hands down. So 100 adjustments to your broader domain of being, and there's a lot less rubbish around and a lot fewer traps for you to step into. Once you've got your mind and your emotions together, and once you're acting that out, then you can extend what you're willing to consider yourself and start fixing up the things that are a part of your broader extent. Now, just because things announce themselves as in need of repair doesn't mean that it's you right then and there that should repair them. You have to have some humility. You don't walk up to a helicopter that isn't working. You just start tinkering away with it. You have to stay within your domain of confidence. Fix it. Fix it. At the drop of a hat, go back to where you live and sit down and think, okay, I'm going to make this place better for half an hour. What should I do? You have to ask, and things will just pop up like mad. And it's partly because your mind is a very strange thing. As soon as you give it a name, a genuine aim, it'll reconfigure the world in keeping with that aim. Be careful what you aim at. What you aim at determines the way the world manifests itself to you. And so if the world is manifesting itself in a very negative way, one thing to ask is, are you aiming at the right thing? You know, I'm not trying to reduce everybody's problems to an improper aim. People get cut off at the knees for all sorts of reasons. There's a random element to being, that's for sure. And things do happen to people. But it's still a great thing to ask. When I started working on this problem, or I guess when it started working on me, it was probably really in the mid-80s. I found myself suffering from two things. One was a very lengthy sequence of nightmares of nuclear destruction. They're very affecting dreams. And associated with that was a sense of amazement that a dream that was that awful could reflect a reality that could be that awful. And an additional amazement at the fact that despite the production of tens and thousands of weapons of unimaginable destruction, that people could go about their day-to-day lives without acting as if anything fundamental whatsoever had changed. Now, I've never really been able to figure out why that disturbed me so much when it seemed to not disturb most of the people I knew. It doesn't really matter. Spent my whole life trying to understand what evil was, and more importantly, what might be done about it. Human existence consists of a confrontation between the finite and the infinite. The finite and the infinite. Human existence consists of a confrontation between the finite and the infinite. The finite and the infinite. Human existence consists of a confrontation between the finite and the infinite. The finite and the infinite. Human existence consists of a confrontation between the finite and the infinite. The finite and the infinite. Before you can dare to talk about something like evil, you should do some thinking about what it is that you're talking about. And I don't think you can talk about it at all until you distinguish it from tragedy. The nature of human being is such that it consists of a confrontation with the bounded finite with the unbounded infinite. That those are the bare facts of the matter. The world of experience as it presents itself to us is literally and not metaphorically complex beyond our capacity to understand. And that means people deal in a real sense on an ongoing basis with the infinite. That fact is the reason why religious experience is essentially endemic to mankind. It's a human universal, and it's not because people believe. Human existence consists of the confrontation between the finite and the infinite. The finite and the infinite. Human existence consists of the confrontation between the finite and the infinite. The finite and the infinite. Human existence consists of the confrontation between the finite and the infinite. The finite and the infinite. Human existence consists of the confrontation between the finite and the infinite. The finite and the infinite. And religious systems merely take that into account. Now, our finitude in the face of the infinite has some inevitable consequences. Those consequences are essentially the existential conditions of life. The finite is always overwhelmed by the infinite. It has to be, because it can't encapsulate it. And so what that means is the suffering is central to the nature of human existence. Suffering exists as the consequences of our limitations. Every single person who's alive is going to die. Suffering exists as the consequences of our limitations. Every single person who's alive is going to die. And every single person who's alive is going to deal with serious physical illness and mental distress. And so the fact of our finitude is essential to the nature of our being, and we're forced to deal with it on an ongoing basis. If you could do absolutely anything you wanted at any point, and be anywhere you wanted, be anything you wanted. If there was nothing that was out of your reach, there would be nothing to do. There's no story, and there's no being, and there's no story, and there's no being, and there's something about being that is a story, and without limitations, there's no story. There's no story. There's no story. Suffering exists as the consequences of our limitations. Every single person who's alive is going to die. Suffering exists as the consequences of our limitations. Every single person who's alive is going to die. Humans are vulnerable, and that's tragic. But if tragedy is the price that we pay for existence, then so be it. So tragedy itself can't be regarded as evil. It's a condition of existence. So earthquakes aren't evil, and cancer isn't evil, and mental illness isn't evil. Predators aren't evil. They just are part of the way things are. But there are certain categories of human action that are definitely outside the parameters of mere tragedy. And those are the things we really have to get a handle on. Suffering exists as the consequences of our limitations. Every single person who's alive is going to die. Suffering exists as the consequences of our limitations.
Hero.
He's got for clout. Evil for me is differentiated from tragedy by its lack of necessity and its voluntarism. Evil is more pernicious than that which is generated by social inequality. I think it's actually a form of demonically warped aesthetic. Demonically warped aesthetic. Evil is more pernicious than that demonically warped aesthetic. The motto on the gates of Auschwitz, work will make you free. That's an aesthetic of evil. To make a joke. It's a terrible, terrible, ironic joke. It's instructive to meditate on what sort of imagination would have the arrogance to tell such a terrible joke. Demonically warped aesthetic. Demonically warped aesthetic. Evil is more pernicious than that. Demonically warped aesthetic. Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say unto you, that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Wherefore, if God so clothes the grass of the field, which today is and tomorrow is cast into the oven, shall he not much more clothe you? O ye of little faith. O ye of little faith. Shall he not much more clothe you? Therefore, take no thought, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or wherewithal shall we be clothed? Those are famous lines. That's sort of Christ the hippie, right? It's like, hey, let it all hang out, do your thing, and everything will come to you. But that's seriously not the proper interpretation, because there's a kicker with this, and the kicker is this. For your heavenly Father knows you have need of all these things. But seek ye first his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Ye of little faith. Very interesting idea here. It's certainly one of the most profound ideas that I've ever encountered. If you configure your life so that what you are genuinely doing is aiming at the highest possible good, then the things that you need to survive and to thrive on a day-to-day basis will deliver themselves to you. If you dare to do the most difficult thing that you can conceptualize, your life will work out better than it will if you do anything else. Well, how are you going to find out if that's true? There's no way you're going to find out whether or not that's true unless you do it. You have to be all in this game. All in this game. All in this game. All in this game. Oh, ye of little faith. 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 It's like what happens at the beginning of the story of Pinocchio is that Geppetto wishes on a star. So what Geppetto does is align himself with the metaphorical manifestation of the highest good he can conceptualize. He aims at the star. For him, the star is the possibility that he can take creation, whose strings are being pulled by unseen forces, and have it transform into something that's autonomous and real. Well, that's a hell of an ambition. You know, and we're wise enough to put that into children's movies, but too foolish to understand what it means. That's an interesting juxtaposition, that we can both know that and not know it at the same time. You can go to the movie, you can watch it, and it makes sense, but that doesn't mean that you can go home and think, well, I know what that meant. You can go to the movie, you can watch it, and it makes sense, but that doesn't mean that you can go home and think, well, I know what that meant. You can go to the movie, you can watch it, and it makes sense, but that doesn't mean that you can go home and think, well, I know what that meant. You can go to the movie, you can watch it, and it makes sense, but that doesn't mean that you can go home and think, well, I know what that meant. Well, people are complicated, right? We exist at different levels, and all the levels don't communicate with one another. But the movie is a hypothesis, and the hypothesis is there's no better pathway to self-realization and the ennoblement of being than to posit the highest good that you can conceive of and commit yourself to it. You can go to the movie, you can watch it, and it makes sense, but that doesn't mean that you can go home and think, well, I know what that meant. You can go to the movie, you can watch it, and it makes sense, but that doesn't mean that you can go home and think, well, I know what that meant. You can go to the movie, you can watch it, and it makes sense, but that doesn't mean that you can go home and think, well, I know what that meant. You can go to the movie, you can watch it, and it makes sense, but that doesn't mean that you can go home and think, well, I know what that meant. to self-realization and the ennoblement of being than to posit the highest good that you can conceive of and commit yourself to it. And then you might ask yourself, and this is definitely worth asking, is do you really have anything better to do? And if you don't, well, why would you do anything else? Therefore, take no thought for tomorrow, for tomorrow shall take thought for the things of itself. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. I spent a long time trying to figure out what that meant too, because it's another one of those lines that can easily be read as pro grasshopper and the ant. Remember the old fable of the grasshopper and the ant? Maybe not. I'm not going to tell it. But the ant works, the grasshopper fiddles. The ant has a pretty good time in the winter, and the grasshopper dies. So this is like a pro-grasshopper line, but it's not. It says something else. It says that if you orient yourself properly and then pay attention to what you do every day, that works. That works. That works. That works. And you can live in the day. It has an aim. It has to have an aim. That makes every moment supercharged and meaning. Live in the day. It has an aim. It has to have an aim. That makes every moment supercharged and meaning. The world shifts itself around your aim. You're a creature that has an aim. You have to have an aim in order to do something. You're an aiming creature. You look at a point and you move towards it. It's built right into you. And so you have an aim. Well, let's say your aim is the highest possible aim. That sets up the world around you. It organizes all of your perception, what you see and you don't see, your emotions and your motivation. So you organize yourself around that aim, and then what happens? The day manifests itself as a series of challenges and problems. And if you solve them properly, you stay on the pathway towards that aim, and you can concentrate on the day. And so that way you get to have your cake and eat it too. Because you can point into the distance, the far distance. Point into the distance, the far distance. And you can live in the day. It has an aim. It has to have an aim. That makes every moment supercharged and meaning. Live in the day. It has an aim. It has to have an aim. That makes every moment supercharged and meaning. If everything that you're doing is related to the highest possible aim that you can conceptualize, that's the very definition of the meaning that is sustainable in your life. Well, and then the issue is that, well, all hell's about to break loose, and chaos is coming. It's like when that's happening in your life, you might want to be doing something that you know is truly worthwhile. Because that's what will keep you afloat when everything is flooded. And you don't want to wait until it's left out to start doing that. Because if you're already out, and you don't know how to captain it, the probability is very high that you can drown. And you can live in the day. It has an aim. It has to have an aim. That makes every moment supercharged with meaning. Live in the day. It has an aim. It has to have an aim. That makes every moment supercharged with meaning. I'm quite enamored of lobster, as some of you might know, because I found out. This just blew me away when I found it out. Just exactly how much continuity there was in the neurochemistry of human beings and the neurochemistry of animals. Absolutely staggering. It's the sort of thing that makes the fact of evolution something like self-evident. Random mutation and natural selection is the only way you can solve the problem of how to deal with an environment that's complex beyond your ability to comprehend. You generate endless variant because God only knows what the hell's going to happen next. Almost all of them die because they're failures, and a couple propagate. And the environment keeps moving around like a giant snake. You never know what it's going to do next. And so the best you can do is say, well, here's 30 things that might work. You know, 28 of them are going to perish. Anyways, back to the lobsters. 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 So these creatures engage in dominance disputes, so it really is the toughest lobster that wins. And what's so cool about the lobster is that when a lobster wins, he flexes, he gets bigger, so he gets bigger, because he's a winner. It's like he's advertising about it. The neurochemical system that makes him flex is serotonergic. And you think, well, what the hell does that mean? I'll tell you what it means. It's the same chemical that's affected by antidepressants in human beings. And so, like, if you're depressed, you're a defeated lobster. You're like this. I'm small. Things are dangerous. Defeated lobster. You're like this. I'm small. I don't want to fight. You give somebody an antidepressant, it's like they stretch, and then they're ready to take on the world again. Well, if you give lobsters who just got defeated in a fight serotonin, then they stretch out and they'll fight again. Like, we separated from those creatures on the evolutionary timescale somewhere between 350 and 600 million years ago, and the damn neurochemistry is the same. And so that's another indication of just how important hierarchies of authority are. Back to the lobsters. 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 Okay, so here's the problem. There's a big problem here. The problem is, it's true. All you know is why. Maybe you're too short, or you're not as beautiful as you could be, or your grandparent was a serf. Likely, because almost everybody's great-grandparent was. You know, you're not as smart as you could be, and you have a sick relative, and you have your own physical problems. Frankly, you're a mess. Frankly, you're a mess. And you're oppressed in every possible way, including your ancestry and your biology. The entire sum of human history has conspired trust you. We'll take every single thing into account, and then we'll fix yours too. We'll take every single thing into account. It's like, no, you won't. No, you won't. No, you won't. Because you can't. You can't. It's technically impossible. You're oppressed, 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 you're oppressed. All of you know why. You're oppressed, 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 you're oppressed. First of all, you can't even list all the ways that you're oppressed. Second, how are you going to weight them? Third, who's going to decide? That's the bloody thing. Who's going to decide? Who's going to decide? That's the thing. You have to fractionate the oppressed all the way down to the level of the individual. That's what the West figured out. It's not an accident that the axiomatic Western individual is someone who was unfit, cross, and tortured. It's like, yes, right, exactly. About that for a long time too. It's like, well, you don't get together in a damn law. If all that does allow you to be as horrible as you can possibly imagine and suffer from none of the consequences, that's a bad idea. So how about we don't do that? Well, there's a deep idea in the West too. It's like, pick up your damn suffering and bear it. Try to be a good person so you don't make it worse. That's the truth, you know?
He actually did quite a bit of work.
I read a lot about terrible things that people have done to each other. You just can't.
So I'm not sure if anyone's watching. Oh, geez. So the reason why I have the mask is because the whole roof was filled with rats. There's not necessarily rats, but mice and rats. You can see this is kind of where they were living, and there's still a bunch of shit in there. Got some cross ventilation going on. I'm trying to keep the mask on as often as I can, but I'm getting kind of tired. My hope was to get all the roofing out today, and tomorrow come back and really clean it. So I've got a lot of work to do, but I think I need to go eat. Unfortunately, I have to get sanitized before I can eat, and then all strapped up again. So anyways, if you are gonna be hanging out for this remodel, welcome to my channel. My hope is to talk about some philosophy, some politics, dancing, music, all the above, and obviously renovating this RV. Lost my job recently, so I'm selling all the stuff I've got and trying to reduce my living expenses so I can go back to school. Anyways, welcome. I'm gonna go eat.